So I've completed the soda blasting of the entire cylinder head. Again, my intention was not to restore it, but to clean it up. And this is the exhaust side. Get it ready for the next step, which is going through the valves. So you can see the surfaces here are nice and uniform in color. The combustion chambers have all been cleaned. So my next step now is to continue on with removing the valve keepers. This valve has already been done. I'll pop it out. You can see what it looks like. This is the valve. I actually have already lapped this one in. Now, lapping of these valves really is only effective if the valve seat itself, which is where the valve sets into, and the valve doesn't have severe pitting. This engine, which has about 17,000 miles on it, doesn't have any pitting on at least this valve. Obviously, I haven't gone through the others. So my intention in lapping them was just to clean them up. So you can see the very uniform gray appearance of the valve seat. That's what you would look for. And the same here in the head. So this valve, which is the #1 exhaust, lapped in really well. And it came out looking very clean. So I don't have to, at least at this point, I don't think I'm going to have to do the full valve cutting of the seats, cutting of the valves. You've got to have special equipment for that, which I don't have. I would have to take it into the machine shop that does this kind of thing for me. But I think I'm going to be in good shape by going through each of the valves and lapping them in like I did this one. So I'm going to move on to this one and then continue on. I will record the removal of this valve, the keepers, on the opposite side. You can see a little bit of leftover dust from the soda blast cabinet, or the soda blast system. I haven't completed the cleaning of it, which I certainly will do, obviously. But in this view, you're looking at the top end of the engine. This is the reverse of where the intake valve, which I showed earlier, on the engine cylinder side. The intake valve sits something like this. So I'm going to insert the exhaust valve, and you can see it come up through the stem. Then there's a series of springs, and then a cap and some keepers that hold the valve in position. You can see down inside here the valve stem seal, which is to prevent oil from, which lubricates the top end here from getting down into the cylinder. And I'll reposition the camera to give you a little bit better view of that. There's the inside of the valve pocket. I know that keeper probably doesn't show up very well, or rather the valve stem seal, which will be replaced. The seal is right down in here. And I have new ones for that, so all the seals, which are all the same, will be replaced as part of this process. This is the valve spring compressor I bought just for this project. My other valve spring compressor is really too small. I needed something with a deep throat here to get around the mass of this cylinder head, so this is really a car valve spring compressor. There's different sized buckets that you can get. This lower one is going to go on the valve itself. The upper one is going to go on the keeper, or rather the escutcheon on the top of the valve. And as it gets tightened, it will compress the spring, allowing the keepers to be removed. So I'm going to go ahead and install this now. First thing I'm going to do is snug it up, replace it against the valve on the bottom, and tighten this top bucket down against the escutcheon on top of the ring, the valve rather, and snug it up. Perfectly fine to lay that flat against the cylinder head. Make sure everything's centered. Like so. So I have the valve compressor installed. I've got it snugged up against the valve on the bottom here, this bucket. And then I have the top bucket centered over the valve. I'll take this bar, which is designed for this, And now I'm just going to gently tighten down, compressing the valve springs is plural, there's several of them in there. Here's a better view of what's happening. This bucket attached obviously to the threaded rod, as I tighten it, it's pushing down on the escutcheon. This will allow access to the keepers, which are half moon shaped, sit down inside of here, that I'll remove here in just a moment. Here in this view, you can see the two keepers right here. The spring is compressed, the springs are compressed by tension on the bucket, forced down to the escutcheon, and these keepers now become visible. And typically what I do I'll remove one keeper with a magnet. Tricky to do by withholding the camera. Then I'll go in with the magnet again. Now I've got to remove the second keeper like that. So now I've got both keepers out. How clear that's going to be, but they're right there. Now I can relax the tension on the valve spring compressor and the components will come apart. So here's a shot of the setup with the compressor removed. I can remove that escutcheon plate. Then I have, there's two springs, one inside the other. You remove the second one with a magnet, makes it just a little bit easier to get it out. That's really all there is to it. The keepers, the escutcheon, the two springs, and now this valve can push through into the combustion chamber and will come out the other side. And again, there's a seal, valve stem seal in here that will have to be replaced eventually. So let's go around the other side and see what that valve looks like when it comes out. So this is a valve right here. It's the intake valve on the number one cylinder. I'll reach up underneath. Got to find the, there we go, the valve stem. I have not had this out. This is the first time I've pushed it out. And there it is. See a lot of carbon buildup. As I indicated before, this engine has been running very rich. You see a little white. The white you see there is just, I believe, is from the blasting with soda, bicarbonate of soda. So I'll clean that valve all up. It came out easy. It wasn't stuck or anything. And the combustion, or rather the well, the valve well is full of carbon too. I'll clean some of that out. But in the valve seat, we'll have to see when we lap that whether there's any pitting. It doesn't look like there's anything serious right now. There might be some carbon buildup, which is what I would have suspected anyway, given the condition of the valve. It's basically carboned up. So that's essentially how I'll be removing all the valves on this engine. I'm not going to video each one of them because it's repetition from now on. The installation is reversed of what I did to have to remove it. That is, I'll have to put the pieces together, compress it, then carefully reinsert these keepers. You'll notice it shows up on the video here. They're tapered. Got a taper to them. And that'll be a bit later on because I've got some work to do here first, and then of course before I do that I will replace the valve guide seals.